This is Anatomy and Physiology, module number 4, lecture number 1. So, I will send home with you a test on module 3, and I think the stuff is fairly straightforward. We are actually going to finish a small portion of the bones this morning that we did not finish. I've suggested to you a couple of diagrams to be familiar with. There's no other way to do it. You know, I can't ask you to hide it until you get home. But, you know, you just need to be familiar with these diagrams. And how do you become familiar? You know, I don't know. The way I do it is just by looking at the picture and back and forth and looking at the various pictures and the terms and becoming familiar that way and kind of thinking of them in terms of me. You know, that's the way it's done. So that's the way I would encourage you to do it. And then there's another diagram as well. So easy if you draw them yourself. So, was there questions on module 3? We're not quite done, but we will be. And then I want to hand you out for module 4. There we go. That's cool. I like that. There's a solo right here. Hey guys. How do you do? All right. What are you doing this time? Just one of this. Well, really? There you go. There's the bad news. I'm sorry. Not going to leave you out. There we go. Man. We will finish a little bit early today, and I'll give you back your tests and receive any of the stuff that you owe me, and go from there. Oh, my little spiel. Some of you have had me before. And I just gave the spiel to the chemistry class. So, when I was in undergraduate school, the little cow college on the plains, went to church and there was a pastor there, and one of the things he talked about on a regular basis, and I guess I can summarize, I can set it up this way too, near the end of semesters especially, I would find myself exhausted, just exhausted. And the problem with that was not just because I was tired, I found that it was really hard to study for finals, really hard to learn anything in terms of finals. And didn't know what to do about that. But as I mentioned, this guy, this pastor, the church that I attended was mostly students, 200 out of maybe 300. And he would routinely, not just for students, but he would talk about the need for rest. The commandment, you know, the Sabbath commandment, 1 and 7, take it off. Gift of God. What kind of God gives you a day off once a week? I mean, that's a pretty neat God, does that. Well, the problem is a lot of us, especially in school situations, at least sometimes, don't take him up on that. And I didn't. I mean, I try to study 7 days a week to stay up with stuff and to make sure, you know, to study, especially for Monday tests and things like that. I didn't do it. And this guy just pressed the need. He said the commandment is a gift of God, but it's reflective of human need. And it is. The truth of the matter is, in terms of the way our bodies are made, we need regular rest. And so I'm telling you this now, and maybe that's not a problem for you. Maybe taking a day off a week is not a problem for you now, but I can almost guarantee you that at some point in your life it's going to be. You're going to feel the need to work 24/7. And I'm just telling you, if you succumb to that kind of thinking, you won't be as productive. And I wasn't. And so I finally got it, and I started taking some time off, and I found that I really could grasp stuff more by taking a day off as opposed to not. So what does this got to do with anything? It's got to do with next week, which is fall break. And I want you to take either this week or next week off. If you're going to do stuff this week, I'm talking about from this Thursday to next Thursday, then do it. But then the following Thursday to Thursday, in my classes, you take it off. All right, I don't want you doing any of my stuff for a week. I want you to take that time off. And that may sound funny, and maybe your other teachers, are not suggesting that, but that's my deal. And if your parents ask, just refer them to the video or to me, and I'll be glad to tell them. Glad to explain. I want you to get some rest, and I want you to take some time away from my stuff. So, questions about that? Okay. Let's look at the rest of where we were in Module 3 and finish it up. And I believe we are on, let's see, where did we get? Did we get to the overview of the skeletal system? I did not write that down. Let's see. Yeah, we did bone classification. Let's see. We did, I don't think we did overview, did we? Okay, let's do that. Let's do the overview. And let's see, details, process. I think we did do that. Yeah, we did. Yep. Maybe it was just the last page. I'm sorry, guys. Pelvic girdles, we did that. Yep. Hands and feet, axial skeleton. I think that's where we're at. We're at axial skeleton. All right. Sorry about this. All right, let's read. I'm on page 6 of axial skeleton. Is there, because we did the metacarpals and the ankles and feet and that sort of thing. Any questions about any of the stuff we talked about? And again, all we're doing is identifying the anatomy at this point. We're going to look at some of the physiology in the next module in terms of bones, the histology of bone. So I'm on page 6 of your notes, the axial skeleton, and we're going to look at the skull. Details of the axial skeleton, page 83, and there is a very nice little diagram of the skull. One that maybe you need to be familiar with. So that's the portion, the axial skeleton, that supports and protects the head, the neck, and the trunk. And so the skull is composed, did we do that? I think we did that. Yeah, oh well, we'll do it again. 28 different bones. Only the mandible is easy, because I told you about, that's right, I told you about Dr. Dolby, and anyway, and the jawbone of an ass. So, but 28 different bones. Only the mandible is easy to separate. The purpose is to protect the brain, support the eyes and nose. We did. We looked at the parietal view and the frontal view and the vomer. We did that. I think we did it all. Is there any? Did we not?
We did it.
Say what?
We did it.
We did. The man's getting old. That's all I can say. Can't remember from one week to the next. So, was there any questions about any of that stuff? Anything at all? Okie dokie. Let's move on. Let's go to the next module then. I don't think we had another. Let me just look one more time. I want to be absolutely sure about this. Okay. All right. Let's do it. So you got a little bit of stuff. Oh, those are nice little diagrams on page 95. Nice little diagrams. The skeletal system, the histology and movement of the skeletal system. So I've actually got a couple of things for you to write down here, just because, I don't know why. I probably should have filled them in for you, but this way maybe you'll remember the importance of these terms: osteoblast, osteocyte, and osteoclast. I actually used this stuff in a sermon illustration not too long ago. How about that? So, who says this isn't helpful? Bone histology. Bone is classified as connective tissue. We learned that in the last module. Bone, connective tissue proper, and cartilage, whose function depends upon the composition of its extracellular material or matrix. We will see that in terms of looks in just a moment. So, in terms of some suffixes, blast is an immature cell. You're having a blast in your immature cells. A cyte is a mature cell. And an osteo, in terms of a prefix, it means bone. So osteo is bone. So what's an osteoblast? It's a bone-forming cell. Would you write that down on your little notes? And I think that's about it in terms of the rest of them, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's about it. So it is a bone-forming cell. An osteocyte is a mature bone cell surrounded by bone matrix. We'll explain that, and we'll look at pictures in just a minute. So an osteocyte is a mature bone cell surrounded by bone matrix. And then an osteoclast is a large multinucleated cell that breaks down bone. Now, why would you want a cell that breaks down bone? Well, we're going to see that those are absolutely vital to you and your homeostasis with respect to calcium and other minerals. We will find that to be very, very important. Osteoclast is a large multinucleated cell that breaks down bone. All right? Osteoblasts produce bone matrix. Once the matrix is fully formed, the cells are surrounded in lacuna, which are considered osteocytes. All right? Again, that's when the osteoblasts become osteocytes. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you would, turn over a couple of pages, and we're going to get some pictures here. There's figure 4.1. We're gonna get to all that in just a little bit, but there's at least some ideas of what we're talking about. So you see there in terms of an osteocyte in a lacuna. I'm looking at figure 4.1, cancellous bone tissue. We're not to cancellous bone tissue yet, but we will be. So you get the idea there, at least a bit of an idea on where we're going. And also osteoclasts are depicted, and osteoblasts as well, and the matrix that is being formed. So osteoclasts, I'm reading right under the definition that you wrote down. Break down bone, releasing minerals needed by the body and that are stored in bone. So what you've got is constant breaking down and rebuilding of bone. And there's a term for that, which we're going to introduce in a moment. It's called remodeling. So yeah, we remodel our homes, but we also remodel our bones. All right? And that is a beautiful picture. The way I use it, incidentally, if you are interested, is in the sort of a picture of repentance in terms of the need to break down and confess sin and then to be rebuilt. And so kind of an interesting look at it. So bone matrix, in terms of that stuff, it contains protein fibers. It's 30% or more of bone is collagen protein. Osteoblasts secrete the collagen as they build the bone matrix. The collagen gives the bone tissue flexibility and tensile, meaning rope-like strength. So that's what the collagen does for the various bones. And again, when we think of bones, very often we think of long bone, you know, in terms of the femur or whatever. But the bottom line to it is that's what the collagen is doing. So the bone matrix contains also calcium salts, calcium minerals, and bone minerals. The chemical name there is hydroxyapatite. And unlike other components of connective tissue matrices, the cells do not produce the calcium salts in bone matrix. The blood brings calcium salts to the bone matrix. The hydroxyapatite is 40% calcium and 20% phosphorus. Hydroxyapatite gives bone its hardness and compressive strength. In other words, to hold weight, like the enormous weight of this can of cool, refreshing beverage. That's what's given it the strength to do that. So, in any respect, bone is an ingenious mixture of collagen, providing tensile strength and flexibility, plus calcium salts, which provide comprehensive strength. And finally, vitamin D is essential in regulating blood calcium and phosphorus levels. Rickets, old disease maybe you've read about in terms of seafarers of old. They would get rickets as a result of not having fresh fruits and vegetables, but it's really the lack of vitamin D. So us old geezers, so I'm taking a whole slew of vitamin stuff now, and one of them is a calcium supplement, and most of the better calcium supplements all come with vitamin D3 in addition to the calcium. And again, in terms of the absorption of that calcium and your need for vitamin D. Vitamin D is something that you get when you're outside in the sun. Your skin produces it, but unfortunately a lot of us don't get out that much, and or if we do, we got to cover up, such as me, but in any respect. All right, so we actually are to the place of the picture now, the cancellous and compact bone histology, and that is on page 100, and so you get to refer now to the pretty little picture. Cancellous or spongy bone has latticework beams or trabeculae. The spaces in between the trabeculae contain red bone marrow and blood vessels, and three kinds of cells: osteocytes, osteoblasts, and osteoclasts. So the osteocytes inside the bone surround themselves with extracellular material, but they hollow out a living space or lacuna. So again, what we've just introduced is depicted there on page 100. So you see the latticework beams, the trabeculae there of the cancellous bone. You see the spaces containing the blood vessels and the red bone marrow. Then they take a little piece of it and blow it up for you, and now you're getting a picture there in terms of the osteocytes. So there's an osteocyte, and it's producing for itself a little hollowed out living space or a lacuna. And then there's osteoblasts, and they're are on the matrix of the bone, forming new bone tissue. They cannot be surrounded by a matrix. And then osteoclasts, they have many nuclei, and they are breaking down bone. So maybe it seems sort of strange in the sense of one's breaking down and one is building up, but that's exactly what's happening. And so in terms of the osteoclasts, It's hard to see from that picture, but again, they're multinucleate. So, and they're busy breaking down that bone. So that's what's happening there. Would you turn over to the second page of your notes? So, compact bone, that is depicted for you on page 101. Compact bone tissue is arranged in osteons. Those are tightly packed cylinders. So look at how the osteon is depicted there. This cylinder is an osteon, says the diagram, and they have the two arrows pointing to, again, what looks like one of those circular, if you can envision it, tubes, and the tubes are sort of displayed for you by the cutout on the sides. So they're tightly packed cylinders. In the middle of the osteon is the central canal, and that's not exactly depicted for you, but you kind of get a picture of it there, through which blood vessels run. Unlike cartilage, bone contains many blood vessels. Osteons are constructed of concentric lamellae. Those are rings of bone tissue that surround the blood vessels that run through the central canal. So you kind of get it. Well, the blood vessels are depicted there. What am I saying? I was going to say you kind of get an idea in terms of the purple little thing in the middle of them there, but there they are depicted on the cutout on the side. So that's the blood vessels running through a central canal. The interstitial lamellae, that's in between the osteons, these are layers of tissue that do not form cylinders and are the packing material, more or less, between the osteons. So again, you see what is depicted as the interstitial lamellae, and they're pointed to two different versions of them there at the top right-hand corner. The osteocytes in the bone tissue are surrounded by matrix and trapped in lacunae. They look like spiders. That's what they are, actually. They're actually tiny little spiders in your bones, kind of crawling all, and that's why you're so afraid of spiders, because you have them all over your body and you just don't know what to do. So, they look like spiders because of the extensions, the canaliculi. I think, let me see if that's right. Isn't that terrible? Canaliculi. Yeah, canaliculi. I hadn't remembered. Running from their main cell body that communicate with one another because the extension of one cell touches the extension of the other. So that's what's going on there in terms of those little caniculi. This is maybe the most interesting part about the module. I'm kind of this way with this module, except with this. Bone growth and bone remodeling, and then bone repair. So we'll kind of introduce some of the stuff that I like the best in the module, and that will be on your test too. What is it that Mr. Holling likes the best in the module? So. Anyway, bone growth and remodeling, and then also bone repair. Just a fascinating process, an amazing process, one necessitated by a fallen world. You know, if we don't fall down and go boom and hurt ourselves, then we don't need to fix our bones, but we do from time to time. So bone growth and bone remodeling. We introduced this in the last module. We showed you a little bit about that, but now, as I mentioned to you then, we're getting into it with a little more detail. The bones of the body are constantly changing, and that's what you're getting an idea of, isn't it? During youth, the epiphyseal plates, look at the little depiction there of the epiphyseal plates and what says youth there, separate the diaphyses from the epiphyses of the long bone. So we learned about that in terms of the epiphyses, which maybe you describe as the ball of that long bone, and the diaphyses, which is the longer portion. Cartilage cells, chondrocytes, near the epiphyses, rapidly reproduce, forming new cartilage. All right? look at the picture there in terms of maturing. So some of you are still maturing. You're still growing. I think I quit when I was about a junior or so in high school. And I would have liked a little more, but I just didn't get it. So, but actually in terms of human growth, that can happen up and through the late teens. So in 19 sometimes. But in any respect, you see the maturing there, the new cartilage formation. Where was I? Here we go. Cartilage cells, chondrocytes near the epiphyses are rapidly reproducing, forming new cartilage. The chondrocytes near the diaphyses enlarge, increasing the size of their lacunae. Then calcium salts accumulate in this cartilage. The chondrocytes, calcium cells, die, leaving behind large holes once their lacunae, all of which is called calcified cartilage. Blood vessels grow into the enlarged lacunae, bringing osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts begin laying bone matrix on top of the calcified cartilage, forming new cancellous bone, the process of which is called ossification, turning cartilage into bone. And so again, the little drawing there kind of depicts that all together. Again, the wording, the digital part of what we're reading is helpful in terms of explaining this picture. So as you're studying this, that's what I'd do. I'd reread through the depiction of bone growth and remodeling, and then look at the picture as you do. The epiphyseal plates do not grow or enlarge. The cartilage near the diaphyses is ossified as quickly as new cartilage near the epiphyses is formed. The length of the diaphyses lengthens. New bone is growing at the end of the diaphyses, increasing the length of the bone. So that's the point here in terms of the diaphyses is what is extending and making you taller and your arms longer. At maturity, bones stop growing, cartilage in the epiphyseal plates ossify, and epiphyseal plates are called epiphyseal lines. Epiphyses can grow in the same way as the diaphyses, except that articular cartilage never completely ossifies. When the bone is fully grown, there is still articular cartilage at the end, allowing smooth joint movement. Bones grow in diameter also when osteoblasts lay new bone matrix on top of old bone matrix. At the same time, osteoclasts remove bone from the medullary cavity, increasing the cavity size, and all of this is called apositional bone growth. So the idea there is that at maturity, of course, your bones stop lengthening, but they can thicken or grow in terms of diameter. I've told you, I'm fairly certain I've told you the story of my brother and his bout with acromegaly, which is the name of the syndrome that comes from, usually it's a non-malignant tumor on the pituitary gland, which then causes abnormal production of human growth hormone. And some athletes would love that. They take the human growth hormone just to make them hit more or throw harder or run faster. But that's also something that's quite destructive. And in his case, the additional human growth hormone that started to produce probably when he was in his late 20s, early 30s, didn't cause bone growth, but it didn't cause him to get taller. It caused him to get wider. And you've seen it in terms of, you know, they're still doing it, I'm sad to say. players, football players, baseball players, they're still messing with steroids and HGH stuff. But years ago, when it was not tracked as well as it's being tracked now, you could see these guys, and you can still see it in WWE. Anybody here like to watch the wrestling? The wrestling? You see it in them guys when they've got these massive brows, you know, in terms of here in the skull, and they look like cavemen almost. That's the result of human bone growth, apositional bone growth. And sadly, my brother had that, and apositional bone growth along his spine and near his hips. And sadly, well, they say a lot of people who had it as long as he did before he had the surgery to remove the tumor, they are in wheelchairs by the time they're in their late 60s. And my brother is 70 and he's struggling, but he's not in a wheelchair. So he's had several surgeries. But in any respect, that's one of the realities. And those guys that so emphasized the steroids and the HGH years ago, so many of them have passed away because that stuff is just really hard on the system. Again, I don't know if any of you are athletes here or going to pursue any of that, or you know any athletes, but whatever you can do to tell them to avoid it. So, because that's dangerous, bad stuff. I'm at the bottom of page 2. So bone is constantly being rebuilt. Its osteoclasts are breaking it down, and then it's rebuilt. And this process is called bone remodeling. Bone remodeling is done because, and here's the reasons, new bone tissue is always cancellous bone, whether there is a bone break, replacing old bone, or youthful growth. Any compact bone is the result of bone remodeling. The second reason is bones increase or decrease their mass as needed. Exercise and added weight cause bone mass to increase. Losing weight and sedentary lifestyle can cause the loss of bone mass. Again, that's a struggle for some of us when we age. You know, stuff hurts and you're disinclined to want to move in ways that make it hurt. So a lot of us get sedentary. Some of us just get lazy. And the result is you lose bone mass because of that. And the result of that can be brittle bones and broken hips. Again, sadly, in terms of the elderly, that's one of the ways that the Lord takes them home. Is a broken hip can, it's not fatal, but the processes that begin when an elderly person breaks a hip, the medical issues associated, sometimes that's it. I mean, the decline. So people have to be greatly encouraged to move. My mom broke a hip, and she lived about another two and a half years. But it was a slow decline, and again, when you hurt, you're disinclined to want to do what makes it hurt, right? And yet doing what makes it hurt is ultimately helpful for you. Bones need to be reshaped. 1/3 of bone is collagen, of course, the protein, and that deteriorates over time, as does hydroxyapatite. Turn over to page 3 of your notes. So we're not too bad. We'll go through page 3 and then we're going to call it a fall break. Let's see what I'm going to do. So we'll see what we can get done here. Bones are remodeled by osteoblasts, which lay down new bone, and osteoclasts, which secrete an acid that dissolves the bone salts as proteolytic enzymes which digest collagen. Broken bone. So look at the depiction on page 105, figure 4.4. Broken bone. There's blood vessels in the bone, as we've said, as we indicated in a couple of the other illustrations. And periosteum they're damaged when bone is broken, and blood flows out of the vessels into the surrounding tissues, and that pooling of blood, however small, is called a hematoma. That's a localized mass of blood that is confined to an organ or some definable space, which eventually forms a clot, which stops the bleeding. Since the osteocytes near the break do not get nutrients or oxygen, they die. A callus, which is a mass of tissue that connects the ends of a broken bone, forms. The callus that forms between the breaks of the bone is called an internal callus, and they will form new bone tissue. The callus that forms around the outside of the bone is called the external callus, and that's formed only to stabilize the bone while it's being healed. Think about gluing two sticks together, two wood rods. You glue the ends, and you want them to stick, and so you know how easy that would be to separate them after you put the glue on. But if you wrap that with a piece of tape that you can somehow remove after you glue them, that's what we're talking about in terms of the external callus. The tape around the ends of the bone is sort of a depiction of the external callus. After formation of the internal and external calluses, blood vessels grow into the internal callus, and fibroblasts start producing cartilage. Phagocytic cells begin breaking down the blood clot and cleaning up the debris. Osteoclasts begin breaking down dead osteocytes. Osteoblasts start laying down new bone tissue on top of the fibrocartilage that has replaced the clot. The cartilage in the external and internal callus is ossified, forming new cancellous bone tissue. And so some of what I've just read is really well depicted there in figure 4.4. So you get the anatomy there in terms of the medullary cavity, the compact bone. There was the formation of the hematoma after the break. Then you see in terms of the dead bone, that's being removed ultimately, broken down by the osteoclasts. You see the fibrocartilage depicted in red that is formed, the callus on both sides. You see the cartilage being developed as well. The callus then ossifies, and that's the depiction that you have there next to it. And so then picking back up reading, this broken bone repair can take more than a year to complete. The longest process is the remodeling. People are able to come out of casts, not because the bone repair is completely finished, but because the wearer is healed enough that the broken pieces will stay together. And of course, that's what's key in terms of being able to come out of a cast, or to have a pin removed if a pin has been placed in that medullary cavity in order to keep the pieces of bone together. Without the process, that's cartilage forming the external callus, forming cancellous bone, remodeling the cancellous bone with compact bone. Bone would be weak and useless because the forming and remodeling takes a lot of time. So again, in terms of coming out of a cast, you never want to do that too soon. And what is vital, of course, is that those ends of the bone that allow for the formation of those calluses, that those ends of the bone are aligned. And anybody here broken a bone? Anybody here been in a cast? Yeah, yeah. It's fun, wasn't it? Yeah, you too? Yeah.
I got close to breaking it though.
What was that?
I got close to breaking it though. Not even too far along. I had straight to the top of my tailbone.
Oh my. Gotcha. Again, the purpose is to make sure those things are aligned, and that way the bone will form and grow together. And as a matter of fact, it's a very, very productive process. They say that this bone repair process sometimes results in stronger bone than what you started with. So that means all of us should go out and break your leg. Of course, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So we will begin near the end of page 3 with bone homeostasis the next time, and that's going to do it. Let me call you up. Is there any questions before I call you up?